I am an 18-year-old detransitioner from the Central Valley here in California. And I'm here to tell a story, my own story actually, and what I've learned from living through and eventually making it out of my own personal hell. A lot of you in here are parents, siblings, aunts and uncles, and grandparents to a generation that is uniquely vulnerable. And there is, I find, a major disconnect between Gen Z and older generations, and I feel that this is largely due to a lack of trust and understanding between these generations. I speak in hopes of bridging the gap and educating the older generations of what is going on with the younger generation, because this is a critical period in time when that understanding and compassion is needed, because our youth are in grave danger. The advent of the internet and social media has changed the way that children grow up, and with the internet came atrocities that we are still learning about today. I myself am a formerly trans-identified kid. I fell victim to the idea that I, as a girl, could become a boy if I so wanted. And at the age of 12, I began to cut my hair shorter and buy boys' clothing, and I asked my friends to refer to me as a boy and my family as their son and brother. An important aspect of my story was that I do have a very supportive family, and both of my parents were in the house, and I have many older siblings. I wasn't abused at all. I am not just a corner case. But yeah, my childhood was pretty normal as far as that goes. When you think of a stereotypical girl, you're probably thinking of how I was when I was little. I mean, I loved bright colors like pink and purple. I loved wearing skirts and dresses and playing with dolls and drawing. I still love drawing. I admit that growing up with so many brothers did rub off on me a little bit. I still love playing video games, and when I was a kid, I loved playing in the dirt and with like my older brother's Legos, Nerf guns, and toy trucks. As I matured, I started to associate with and relate more to boys, and I found it more and more difficult as the years went on to connect with or even understand other girls my age. This used to be called being a tomboy, and there is nothing wrong with this. I wish that I knew this when I started puberty at 9 years old. From a very young age, I dealt with both my peers and the adults around me making uncomfortable and sometimes hurtful comments on my developing body. And I moved neighborhoods before starting middle school, and I turned to the internet because I had so few friends in person. Little did I know that as soon as I made my first Instagram account at 11, the algorithm would present to me trans-identifying kids, unachievable body standards for women, and even softcore porn. Unfortunately, the things that I saw on the internet and social media did not just extend to imagery. The algorithms on social media like Instagram and Tumblr very easily pigeonhole people into echo chambers, and kids are just not socially aware enough to realize what is going on. I was captured by woke ideologies without even realizing that there was such a thing. One of the most damaging aspects of these pervasive ideologies is modern-day feminism, which feminism used to be about empowering women and understanding that we are powerful in ways that men could not even begin to imagine. It used to be about the idea that we are not just stereotypes. It used to mean that women can make our own future and deserve not just a place in the world, but to be leaders in it. And the so-called intersectional feminism of today has completely thrown these ideas out the window. This new destructive approach to feminism has washed over the footsteps of heroes like Sojourner Truth and is actively degrading the rights and safety of women. Intersectional feminism not only does that, but it also infringes upon the rights of others and has devolved into a men's rights movement. I have a feeling that not a single woman in this room wants to see a man in a wig using our restrooms and locker facilities. These are all ideas that I was unknowingly indoctrinating myself into at 11 years old. I think any girl that age would despise growing into a woman if that was her idea of womanhood. I decided that I wanted nothing to do with womanhood anymore, and that I wanted out. And from the internet, I learned that there was a way out. I left a letter to my parents on the living room table, explaining to them that I am no longer their daughter. Instead, I am their son. They had no idea what to do with me. They loved me and they wanted to support me, so they did what most parents do when a child is suffering from a mental health problem. They sought professional help for me. And that ended up being the biggest mistake that my parents and many parents around the world really have made. The doctors that we went to, they weren't really doctors. They were liars. I was not suicidal, but my doctors did not hesitate to coerce them into medicalizing me with cross-sex hormones, and they cited faulty suicide statistics that are just not scientific. They gave them a very simple question. Would you rather have a live son or a dead daughter? I was referred to an endocrinologist who actually hesitated to put me on puberty blockers because he said there would be concerns for my cognitive development. My so-called gender specialist expressed frustration with this and referred me to another who immediately affirmed and prescribed blockers as well as cross-sex hormones to me at only 13 years old. Imagine telling a 13-year-old girl, "Are you aware that you may experience atrophy of some reproductive organs?" If you believe that a girl who thinks that she's trapped in the wrong body can provide informed consent to something like this, you need to lose your license to practice medicine. I didn't understand that this decision would permanently impact my overall health. I still don't know whether I'll be able to conceive a child or not. I wore a compression device called a chest binder for 2 years, and it compressed my breasts into my ribs so hard that my rib cage is permanently deformed. I wanted to stop wearing this at school and while swimming or exercising or while walking home in 100-degree weather. I wanted to look like a boy, permanently. And my surgeon, my butcher, really, removed my healthy breasts at the age of 15. I was 15 years old, and not a single medical professional questioned this. They say that this is the way to progress. And without realizing it, I started to grieve over my breasts and my feminine form that was lost. But I didn't realize what this emotion was, because everybody around me knew me as Leo now. I had been transitioning for 3 years at this point. I no longer looked like a girl. I had no breasts. I was developing muscles and squarish features from the cross-sex hormones, and I just assumed that the emotional turmoil was just part of the post-op period. But I progressively became worse over time. My grade performance and attendance at school were at an all-time low during my last 2 years of high school, and I ended up dropping out several times until I ended up getting a diploma equivalent. It wasn't until the second semester of my junior year, about 11 months after my surgery, that I really started to realize what I had done to myself. I was in a class about child psychology, and I had a lesson about the role that physical contact and breastfeeding play in the bond between mother and child, and how that bond affects their later cognitive and social development. before this point in time, I hardly ever thought about how having kids might look for me because, I mean, I was a kid. But during my lessons, I realized that not only was my ability to naturally feed my children taken away from me forever, I may not even be able to naturally birth my children. And this was just horrific to me. And the illusion fell apart. I was and always will be female. So the next question would be, what are we able to do about this? I believe that this is a spiritual battle that needs to be fought with love and understanding. I have many detransition friends who feel that they have been failed by religious institutions. There are some people who have come at this issue with hatred, but there is no room for that if you want to help these kids. Love will always triumph. So you have to love people that are struggling with this without affirming the illusion. I've met many parents who have children who are struggling with the social contagion. And to many, this situation just feels hopeless. There's parents who have lost custody of their children because they refuse to affirm their child's transgender identity. But the biggest reason that we have gotten to this point is because many of us were unaware of this in the first place. We all need to be aware. We need to keep tabs on politics, and especially local and state level politics and legislature. Parents and caretakers need to keep a close eye on their children, make sure that they're involved in their community, and that they're active in a sport or a hobby. And the next step would be to educate our community and in helping these kids without ostracizing them. I've met many transgender people and detransitioners who have been failed by Christian family members and churches, and many of them actually shot me down when I told them that I was speaking out of church. I think that Christians need to do better in this regard. I think we all know this. I will continue to spread my message to all who will hear me out. I've started an organization called Detrans United, run by people who are in a situation quite like mine. They're all detransitioners who want to do activism against the institutions and ideology that peddle this barbaric practice. And we are going up against transgender activists who have millions of followers online and huge sponsors like Amazon, but the tide is visibly starting to shift. I'm really proud of what we have accomplished so far. Vanderbilt University in Tennessee actually has recently stopped all of their transition surgeries in minors. I think it's safe to say that we are winning, and I'll be in this fight until no more children are being transitioned and subjected to medical experimentation. Thank you.